Charlie Parker is the absolute master in this. How these bebop lines come out with such ease. I'm of course talking about the bebop octave displacement, or what Barry Harris would call it, the pivot. The pivot phrase is truly defining bebop. There's of course the bebop scale, and there is the fast changing rhythm in all these beautiful licks and lines. But one of the definite phrases that defines bebop is the pivot phrase, or the octave displacement phrase. This line just runs down the A7 scale. From the C sharp it jumps down to play that E, G and the B flat, getting an A7 flat 9. If you do not make that jump, it's basically just a scale down and arpeggio up. When adding the pivot to your vocabulary, you get much hipper jazz lines. You get these great jumps in the straight scale lines. Later in this video I'll get into how you can make your own pivot lines and get into a much more modern jazz sound. This E7 A minor D7 line has 3 pivots. On E7 the jump from the G sharp to the B can be outlined by moving that G sharp down, getting an E7 arpeggio from the 3rd, the G sharp. On A minor I move the line from the E up, then you're getting a C major triad on that A minor 7 chord, the upper structure. On D7 you get the F sharp to the D up. An easier, I'm not saying more beautiful, but easier way to resolve is F sharp to D down. In the end of the first bar, this brilliant pivot is basically moving the D and the C up. If you straighten this line out, you basically just got a scale movement down, and then at the end the C7 moving up. The essence of the octave displacement is very clear in this example. When we remove those pivots, it's basically just that E7 scale down. So inserting pivots into your jazz lines makes them much more interesting. Get all these jazz lines in all 12 keys in the lesson manual. It's a very easy download on Patreon. When you use octave displacement in any of your jazz lines, you get exciting and new lines by playing the unexpected. You do not expect the line suddenly to jump up or down and continue. In this straight line down, you can swap out some of the line with the G major 7 chord, the upper structure of the E minor chord, and you get a beautiful pivot in there, making it unexpected but sound really jazzy. If you kind of play the same line, you can make the pivot going up instead of going down, and then just move the rest of the scale 1 octave up. What you also can do is play the same line, but make the pivot up, play an arpeggio down. There are lots of possibilities when using the pivot. Remember that this amazing pivot or octave displacement sound comes from taking some of the line you already played, moving that part up or down, and swapping it out with further scale or an arpeggio up or down, creating an unexpected turn in the sound. Training the pivot or the octave displacement in technical exercises makes it come out in your lines much easier. When playing exercises like this, I really try to hang them up on chords. This enables me to play patterns in the chords, making my practice much more structured. Here starting on the 7th, jumping down to the root. But you can also fit these patterns to other chords, what you see fit. I really believe that it's important to add the how to use it perspective when you're practicing your technical exercises. And of course you have to play arpeggios when you're using the pivots. Be creative when you practice your technique, turning the patterns around. Here it's triads going up, moving down the scale. Get these and many more exercises in the lesson manual on Patreon. Get access to a weekly release of more than 50 pages of exercise and licks. Check it on Patreon, link is in the description. This is a 2-5-1 in D major. Putting the pivot in the scale 1 on the E minor 7. and later adding a pivot on the A7 flat 9. But this line could have sounded like this. Basically a chromatic scale run down. I really think that the pivot adds this extra jazz essence into the line, and it's much more interesting to listen to. Begin changing the lines you have in your vocabulary and add pivots to these. Check out where you can fit in octave displacements. This process is, as so many things in music, trial and error. At some point when playing these exercises and these licks in the lesson manual, they will become a second nature to you, and you will be able to add these into your natural playing. In this line, in the second bar, I'm playing the tritone substituted dominant, but this more modern sound should not keep you from adding pivots. On the E minor, I play the B minor 7 chord as the pivot. And in the second bar, I play the B flat minor 7 chord as the pivot. And in the last bar, I'm using a standard pivot on the D major 9, E down to F sharp. Actually using the F sharp minor 7 chord as an upper structure to the D major 9. Digging deeper into pivots and octave displacements are a great way to add more vocabulary into your playing. Often you can tweak lines into getting much more melodic and much more hip by adding pivots and octave displacements. In the lesson manual on Patreon, I have added lots of exercise and lots of extra licks for you to train this in all 12 keys. Ready to plug and play. Check out these two bebop videos with some of my great heroes looking at chromatic enclosures and the bebop scale. Play music, have fun.